And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 291, I think. Give or take an episode or two. Today, it's Pareidolia. That weird thing where your brain sees faces or subjects or objects in things that aren't actually there. So maybe like the shapes of clouds or wood chip wallpaper, that kind of stuff. So we're going to be discussing this idea and how it applies to photography. So if you're watching live, leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. Let me know what the weather's doing. All the usual stuff. And we can make a start. So yes, welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 291, Pareidolia, if that's how you pronounce it. It's a weird spelling, but it's this notion of seeing things that perhaps aren't there, but it's the way the brain looks at it. That's kind of the fun topic to explore today. So if you're watching live, then leave a comment to let me know you're here. If you happen to be, also if you're watching, click the like button. The like button always kind of helps a bit, gets the algorithms going, maybe puts it in a couple of other feeds. Occasionally we get a new face poking their head round the door, which is always fun. What else can I say? Let's see. We've got a few comments in already, so let's see who we've got. So Gunilla says, Gunilla here is very windy here today. Now Gunilla's in Åland, which is a set of islands between Finland and Sweden. So very windy up there. It's been outside. I've been outside for 2 hours and probably had everything between my ears blown away. Well, hopefully there's enough there to be able to take on board something we say today. Lisa says, hello all from a very warm southern Maryland. Looking forward to a fun podcast. John says, hello all. A nice day here in mid-Ohio. Lisa joins us. And says, she's surprised at Gunilla. Right, Gunilla says, I have forgotten how to answer a comment. Can anyone tell me? I just leave a comment. I mean, if you wanting to say something specifically, like a reply to Lisa, then just do @Lisa or just say Lisa and just type the comment. I don't know that there's a direct reply to specifically, just put it in the comments. I think probably it will get picked up. Susan says, hi here from a sunny/cloudy/sunny/cloudy/breezy Kakubri, and it's still not warm enough. Well, the rain's actually started on here in Castle Douglas, just 9 miles along from the road from Kakubri. So I don't know, are you raining there yet, Susan? Certainly here. April, Joe joins us from Dumfries, first time visitor. Welcome, Joe. Really glad you could make it along. April says, greetings from a warm and sunny Long Island, New York. VG says, good evening, friends, from Chennai in India. And Susan says, no rain yet. I'm not entirely sure. It looks like the wind, must be just missing you, I think. Not unusual for different weather systems. VG says, welcome to Joe. Right, okay, so today, what are we talking about? We're talking about the notion of pareidolia. And again, I'm not 100% on the right pronunciation. It doesn't fall off the tongue easily. It's not the kind of word that you use in everyday conversation for the most part. But it is a notion whereby you kind of see faces. You see or objects, or, the classic thing of lying on your back, looking at the clouds and somebody saying, oh, look, there's a koala bear with a hat on, or there's a turtle that's skiing, or something like that. And so it's kind of an odd phenomenon, but it is one of these. And if you happen to do the online photo sites like PhotoCrowd or Guru Shots, Viewbug, these kind of things, and they're doing their daily competitions or multiple competitions each day, then every now and again this one crops up. And quite often it's usually based around the idea of faces. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. As usual, leave comments, ask questions, all the rest of it. Yes, okay, so I'll tell you what I will do now is I'll just do a little bit of kind of the usual tidy the desktop up a little bit. Slightly rushed today, so missed getting everything right exactly how I wanted it before I started. So if I do that, and then minimize that and drag this over here, then what that does, this gives me a little bit of free space over here so I can see what's going on. A couple of other people saying welcome to Joe. Right, okay. No, I'm blocking all that bit, so I now need to move that bit over there. It's a terrible... Some people have untidy desks. I do as well. And then untidy desktops, which aren't particularly conducive to good podcasts. Straying wildly off the point. I'll tell you what I will do to get this idea of pareidolia going. Let's do this. Let's flip over to here. Again, I should have set up the workspace for that. So hopefully now I'm sitting in one corner and not blocking the screen. Then what I will do is, we start off with an empty blank square. Now, if in this square, let's turn that to black. I put a dot, and then I put another dot, and then I put a line. We have a face. Now, slightly interesting thing here is, for most of us, we see the face. And even more so if I just stick a circle around it. Okay? But actually not everybody does. There are certain brain types and brain wiring which has a difficulty recognizing faces. But not just a face. What we can do, let's just, tell you what, where's the eraser button gone on this? Stupidly. Right, okay, yeah. Let's just take that one out. I can take this, and if rather than a straight line, I do that. We now have a happy face. Or I undo it. We have a sad face. We have a surprised face. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about just purely the ideas of a couple of dots and a line. An unsure face. And we know this because actually, in this day and age, smileys. Every bit of conversation, in fact, I can even see, when VG put good evening friends, she's put a smiley, 2 dots, and in fact, actually, her dots have aren't even dots. They're 2 lines and a smile like that. So the kind of closed eyes, like I'm smiling so much, my cheeks are pushed up and my eyes have closed. So a handful of lines, 3 lines, and we can create a face. And where does this come from? What is this about? And in essence, what we're talking about is the idea of, it's 2 things. First of all, it's recognizing shapes, and then particularly recognizing faces. And in faces, our frontal lobes have a whole chunk of our brain specifically dedicated to reading faces. And some people are really good at it, some people not so good at it. Some people have brain wiring where they find it really difficult. Quite often you tend to find, as a general rule, of course there's lots of exceptions, as a general rule, women tend to be generally slightly better at it than men. But there are also things like where a certain group of people on the autistic spectrum, for example, have a real problem interpreting face. They'll recognize a face, but they can't necessarily interpret an expression quite so easily. It's more difficult to, bold expressions perhaps, but subtle expressions perhaps not so easily. And how easily can you interpret when somebody is maybe faking the expression that they're giving you? So, now, some people are very good at doing that. They're called actors. So we end up with this situation whereby you have faces, you have a chunk of the brain that recognizes faces, but it's not just a face. The brain is designed to recognize shapes out of things as well. Okay, let's minimize that. Let's put up, to go back to the face thing, just to show you what I mean, just with 2 dots and a line. Here we go. 2 daisies and a dandelion, right? This is the same as the smiley. 3 random flowers in a sort of triangular shape has given us a face. Like I say, if you happen to be one of these people who doesn't recognize faces, maybe this entire podcast is just going to be a bit too weird for you. However, assuming that you are making sense of it, we're at that point. But to go back to this idea of why would we recognize faces, but more than a face? And if you take something like this, what are we interpreting when we see what we know to be logs in water. When we look at it, there's logs and there's reflections. But at first glance, the moment you get something like that, your brain starts to go, oh, is it a creature? Is it a sea monster? Is it a seal? Is it a shark? Is it something that might eat me? Or alternatively, is it something I could eat? And that's the key clue here, is that we have evolved to be able to interpret shapes from very little information. For those of you who might remember past podcasts when I talked about silhouettes, that you've just got an outline, and those of us who evolved to be able to identify something that was just an outline and be able to kind of fill in the gaps were more likely to survive and therefore pass on that ability to our offspring. So we are descended from those who had a degree of ability for that. So that again, we are either talking about, if there's an outline there of a saber-toothed tiger, something that might eat us, kill us, cause us danger, then those who recognise it are more likely to survive. Alternatively, if it's an outline of a deer, a wild pig, something that we might eat, then again, we might be able to hunt it, eat it, survive, pass on that knowledge. So the brain has evolved in such a way that we start to interpret shapes, recognise, and therefore that gives, now, okay, sometimes we get a false positive. So, as in the case of this picture here, maybe your first glance is, oh, what kind of creature is that? And then you go, oh no, it's just a log. Better to have a false positive than to have a false negative. A false negative will, of course, kill you or will miss you an opportunity for lunch. So our brain has kind of evolved this way. I'm just seeing, a few comments coming up here. April said that's great with the flowers. Oh, Meg's joined us as well. A few people saying hi to Meg and general conversation going on. That's fine. So this notion then that we have evolved to start, our brain is looking out for shapes. It's filling in the gaps. And then when you tie that in with the fact that we have this specific part of our brain dedicated to faces, it can kind of go into overdrive. But then for that matter, we can use, this is used to our advantage all the time. So quick little reference to the signs challenge we did last week. If you look at a sign, what are these little figures? We look at these, and again, as long as you don't have a kind of wiring that's preventing you from doing it, immediately what we see is two children holding hands crossing the road, two old people crossing the road. On top of that, because of our cultural influences, we would say that of these two children, it looks more like a big sister and a smaller brother because it looks like there's a hint of a skirt. And likewise, because of the hint of the skirt and the taller, this looks like an old man with a stick and then an old woman behind. But what are they? They are squiggles. They are silhouettes. They are just shapes that aren't even that accurate. I'm sure if you actually took a photo of these people, the proportions wouldn't be quite right. What's VG saying? Looks like a shark fin and maybe some mythical bird. I guess you're talking about that one. Could well be. And this, we're going to kind of come on to that in a minute about how different people will interpret in slightly different ways. And that's kind of a fun part. But this bit here is just an example of how, and then smileys, of course, being another example of how we've built up an entire communication system to be able to communicate online and add a level of emotion that just the words alone in a kind of shorthand won't do. So we can put a frowny face, an embarrassed face, a smiley face, an angry face. Facebook is just, pick your face to go along with it, and it gives you half a dozen emotions to express. Sometimes it doesn't give us enough emotions to express. We want to have a different kind of smiley. But what it is not, and here you need to be clear. Okay, when we're talking about pareidolia, what we're talking about is patterns that are actually that aren't there. So there isn't anything here. There isn't a shark or Lisa says, I saw a bird as well. So, if this looks like some kind of mythical bird, down here on the left, and maybe a shark fin, or maybe it's a mouth opening of some creature. That's it. There is nothing there. There is purely, it's bits of wood sticking out of water and reflecting in the evening sun. This one, though, has been designed specifically to induce that ability in our brain in order to communicate something. Similarly, when we come to something like this and we have a piece of wood where there is a literal carving of a bird onto this bench, and there's a carving of an otter onto the bench, and there's carvings of a swallow and a dragonfly, and another bird, and could be a heron here. So this bench has been created specifically to look like animals. Now, this is not pareidolia, okay? And it's good to be clear on the idea that this is not pareidolia, because when we come, as with all of the monthly topic, I will be setting a challenge at the end of the podcast for you to join in. And when I say look for shapes and faces in things, I'm not talking about finding something that already has a literal face that has been painted with the intention of being a face. Okay, so I thought I would kind of get that out of the way first. But let's just talk about something like this. Okay, the classic looking up at the clouds. Okay, now, what can you see in here? Can you see anything in here? Does it just look like clouds? And what becomes kind of interesting here for me is the idea that different people will see different things. When I showed this to Maggie, she immediately said, oh, well, these bits up here look like eyes and this looks a bit like a mouth. Whereas when I saw it, I saw a bird, almost like a phoenix. Right, so you can go back, mythical birds, as Fiji said, where what we've got here is we've got this bit up here is the head, and then we've got wings kind of coming out, and all these wispy bits and everything else. Fiji says an angel swimming. Different kind of idea again. And so this, I think, is always a kind of an interesting aspect of pareidolia, which is not everybody seeing the same thing. And sometimes what we're seeing can be a reflection of our own thoughts and moods. Okay, what's April say? April says, I never knew that pareidolia was the term used for objects that look like faces or something else. Thank you to VG for this topic. Yes, just a quick reminder, it was VG who chose this topic. VG won the Smug points last month, accumulation, and came up with this idea. And I've suddenly lost my track. Doesn't matter. Okay. So we have, yes, this idea then that different people, oh yes, I know where I was going with this, is if you think about things like, you may have heard of the Rorschach Inkblot Test. And with that, what happens is, we did this kind of thing in primary school, in elementary school. You may remember that you've got a piece of paper, you put a splodge of paint on it or ink or something, and then you folded it in half and squidged it together. And then when you opened it up, you had this picture, this kind of reflection picture, where it's kind of even splatter on either side. Now, there's the famous Rorschach Inkblot Test, which was used by psychiatrists and still is in psychologists in some places, whereby you have a ink splatter. And so it's random. There is absolutely nothing in it. It's just a random ink splatter. But you are asked what you see in it. And one person might say, I see a butterfly. And another person might say, I see a bat. Somebody else might say, I see blood splatters. Somebody else might say they see something horrific. Somebody else might say something they see as beautiful or mundane or religious. And each of these interpretations is in some way a reflection of your own brain or the mood, the way you are interpreting the world. And very often it's difficult to know how much bias our mood is creating in the way that we see the world. Because however we are thinking or feeling in that moment generally tends to feel true to us. It feels like it is real, that it is. So if I see people walking around and everybody kind of looks sad, it's just, yeah, well, that's because the world's miserable. But I could also look out the window and just only notice the happy people. and go, oh, everybody looks pretty cheerful, right? And it's a reflection of your own mood, mentality, emotions, that you will pick out things, you will filter the world according to your mood. And then on top of that, we have degrees of imagination. Some people have a very, very vivid visual imagination. Some people have more of an imagination based in sound or touch. And so you get all these kind of extra layers of interpretation. So that notion of in the sky, but I mean, it's not just in the sky. I mean, you can get these interpretations in absolutely anything. I mean, if we look at just this, a bit of peeling paint. What can you see in the peeling paint? Can anybody see anything in the peeling paint? Well, maybe you see, I'll just open this one with Photoshop, because I will talk briefly about a couple of different interpretations. You know, you might see, say, a claw, right? I think you could probably get, you know, something like that, you know, or that way around, I guess, if you're looking at it. So, you know, kind of a thumb, lower half of a claw coming up, and upper half of a claw. That's a possibility. When I was looking at this, what I noticed, what I thought I saw was like a wolf head or a dog head. So you have like the brow coming down here. You would maybe have an eye there. And then it's like the nose, and then the mouth comes in, and then the chin, and then like a kind of furry front. And then this bit kind of comes up, and maybe you've got an ear. So with that, that's the way I was kind of looking at it. Interestingly, when I showed Maggie, she said, oh, looks like a kind of an exaggerated Elvis to me. And I'm going, Elvis, how on earth do you get Elvis? And I couldn't see it at all. And then what she said was, well, this bit here looks like a giant quiff, and this looks like a face. So what we're talking about here is you would have an eye here, right? And then this is kind of the brow, the nose, the mouth, maybe a big chin. And then what you've got is a giant quiff coming over here. That would look something like that. This then looks, you know, more like, so that's where Maggie was coming from, a very kind of, totally different kind of idea. And so depending on what you're seeing then is really kind of becomes a fun kind of interpretation. So back to these games, you know, whether it's children's creating splatters or lying on your back looking at clouds on a kind of fluffy summer's day. What else are we? Sorry. VG in return, responding to April's point about finding out about Pareidolia. VG says, even I was not aware of the name. I sent him a floor tile where I saw a hand appear out of nowhere and thought I should pitch that as a challenge topic. All right, okay. April says this looks like a trick. VG thinks a map of New Zealand. So we've got all sorts of different ways of doing. Oh, right, okay. A chick foot, but is the only one I see. So yeah, what we're starting to see lots of different ideas here. Again, you've got peeling paint work. What else can we find? Lichen. Okay, so lichen on a wall, right? Just markings on a bit of sandstone wall. This blobs of lichen. I mean, absolutely random. What does anybody see here? Now, when I looked at this, I saw a kind of like a sort of dinosaur on roller skates. Now, I don't know how I'm going to, looking at a puppy. Oh, sorry, hang on a sec. That's not where I meant to go. So, and what I mean by that is, okay, let's just open this again, just to kind of show you what I mean, is, so in this case, you might have, in fact, there's almost a little eye with an eyebrow here, like that. And then you've got like a nose and mouth bit here, with a tail coming up at the back. And then down here, for all the world to me, looks like a kind of little puppy, kind of looking up, you know, little legs here, and coming around. Glancing up. And so that was my interpretation. What else have we got? Oh, Susan says that's a baby's pram. And absolutely, because that was also what Maggie said. Maggie said, oh, this looks just like a pram to me. And maybe you would be pushing it from here and, you know, the front end of it coming there. Lisa saying, yes, some animal with a fluffy tail. And this is kind of the fun. So we're looking at what are we going to find? Oh, Vigi says a squirrel. Yeah, I could kind of go for a squirrel as well. Certainly a fluffy tail, you would want a squirrel. But which way round? Which is the head, which is the tail? So this is kind of what we're finding shapes. Now, the thing is, right, up until this point, I would say that what we're talking about with the cloud, with the lichen, with the peeling paint, these are very, very much individual interpretations. And even if, as somebody says, oh, it looks really clear, like Maggie saying, oh, it's Elvis to me. It took me, I couldn't see it until she pointed it out. Some become slightly easier to recognize. Now, if I do this one, for example, not that one, this one, I'm hoping that, do you see the face? And here we have, as April said, a baby dinosaur. Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking in the first place. But yes, with this one, to me, it's much more clear that we have an eye here, and this little rust mark here seems to create a mouth, like, you know, with slightly redder lips, and maybe then a beard or something. Now, April's immediately said an owl. So an owl is another possibility. It doesn't have to be. These could easily be kind of darker feathers. VG reckons these eyes are more like the eyes of an owl as well. Now, I think there's actually an interesting bit when you talk about the notion of the eyes of an owl, which is, if you think about, you know, we're talking about pareidolia as a human brain kind of interpreting the world. But it's not just humans that do it, because if you think about, there are certain butterflies and moths that have patterns on the wings that make the wings look like eyes, some of them even owl's eyes. And what that does is it sort of essentially warns off predators. So predators are seeing the moth, but they're seeing the patterns, and they're interpreting the patterns on the moth's wings to be eyes of a different creature. And so it's not just humans that have this ability to sort of look, see a shape, interpret it, and interpret it wrongly for what's there, is almost a universal for anything that has eyes as its primary way for interacting with the... Having said that, you can also, there are scents, there are smells. Now, not so much for us, but for... in the animal kingdom, there's, I was looking this up, I don't have any pictures of it, but if you look at certain orchids, for example, there is, the bee orchid. You can go and Google this one later. If you look up the bee orchid has patterns on it, stripe patterns, that basically make it look exactly like a female bumblebee. And on top of that, it even gives off the pheromones of a female bumblebee waiting for a male. Right? So the male flies in, essentially attempts to copulate with the orchid, and in the process picks up the pollen, realizes it isn't getting anywhere, flies off somewhere else, finds another bee orchid, lands on that, dusts the pollen off. So there are plants that absolutely exploit this. Now, are the plants doing it consciously? No, they will have evolved somehow in the past. Orchids that looked a little bit bee-like picked up a few of the bees that weren't to paying much attention, and those that sort of did it more. But then you've got other orchids which appeal to different species of fly orchid. There's a spider one as well, I think. There's a whole bunch of different orchids that are really quite specific to a very specific insect for doing that with. So it's the animal kingdom too is also cashing in on this ability of pareidolia. What were we talking about? We're talking about, like, what says? April says, I love that. And Joe says, one very frustrated bee. Yes, I would imagine so. Actually, thinking about the smell and the sense is that it's also a little bit like, I think there are certain supermarkets which pump out into the air. So like the smell of, or there's shops that will, the smell of fresh bread or the smell of, fresh coffee or something like that to help kind of put everybody into a slightly better mood. Car salesman. In fact, actually, there is a scent of something like new car. I'm sure I read this somewhere. The new car smell, which is essentially like a mix of sort of the leather seats and the glue and that's put it together. But there's a new car smell. And you can essentially buy cans of this stuff, and when in car showrooms, when they're selling a second-hand car, they liberally spray it about the place so that when you sit in the car, although it might be 10 years old, it subconsciously registers with you that it's a, oh, it's got that new car smell, therefore it must be newer than it actually is, therefore I'll pay a higher price for it. So we are being conned like this all the time. However, having said that, those kind of things are deliberately being used to con our system. And we've got to kind of go back here, because we can, if we're not careful, we can stray too far. These kind of talk around the pareidolia is about how we are sometimes exploited and manipulated because of it. But for the photographic challenge that I'm going to be doing, this is much more about the idea of it needs to be the random thing, not something that has been created specifically to look like that. So if we go back to here, maybe just actually on the fence post next door, here's another one. And all again, with all this, we've got two little holes here, which to my mind look immediately like eyes. And then we've got a nose, and it is maybe sort of hidden back in it, and it looks to me very creepy. This has got the sort of start of a kind of horror movie kind of look to it. Some kind of malevolent creature or demon or something that's going to come out of the woods and eat you or something, or trap you. So tapping into this sort of fairy tales of old. But again, not everybody is necessarily going to have that. You can also have things like, again, here's a row. It's a stone. It's a stone that's actually sitting in a dry stone wall just along the road from here. And again, what we have here is we've got lichen markings, white patches, which give us the eyes. And this is, we're straight back to the smiley. And then there's a dent, like a bit of broken stone down the bottom here, which feels like a mouth. And so at a quick glance, we have the face. So this is much more back into what you would call real pareidolia. It isn't there. There's no conscious intention on behalf of the rock or anybody else to try and create a face. It's just you're randomly walking along and you see it. And April says, what a sad, with a sad mouth. Yeah, so it's not just a face, it's a bit melancholic. So we've got all these bits in the natural world, and the natural world is full of them. We've got clouds, we've got plants, we've got dead leaves, we've got moss on stuff, and then we've got things like peeling paint and lichens on rocks and on walls. Sometimes what we also have though is more in the kind of man-made objects. We take something like this. Now this is a bit of iron fencing, and it goes all the way along repeating this pattern. As it goes all the way along repeating the pattern, it doesn't necessarily look quite so much like eyes. But when you isolate just two of them, coming back to how we use the camera isn't just seeing what's there. We are dictating what we see, and it looks different if we point it that way than if we point it that way. And if you isolate a bit, suddenly it now looks like, it could almost be steampunk goggles or something. It's eyes with glasses on. And it's back to this thing that even though there isn't necessarily maybe an obvious mouth in this, it could be two eyes and just a long nose, and maybe the mouth is slightly out of sight. That notion of the two large eyes is the bit that grabs us. What's Lisa saying? An owl with glasses. Yeah. Round circles. We get just drawn to two round circles and its eyes. It tends to be where we're immediately drawn to. Let me take something like this. Maggie and I were staying in a travel lodge last weekend over in Berwick, and here's a charger on the wall next to the light switch. And so, fine, you might look at this and you go, okay, that's great. The USB port goes in here, the USB-C goes in there, and there's a couple of screws holding it on. But again, two eyes, kind of nose, and a mouth. It's there, right? It's very difficult not to see it. I keep saying this. The problem is that I do know someone who has no memory for faces. She knows who you are, but by things other than what your face looks like. And actually, if you met her in the street and didn't have the other clues, if she didn't know she was going to be meeting you, she would have no idea who you were unless you told her who you were. So I do know people who don't have very good facial recognition. So I feel slightly hesitant about saying we can all see. But, you know, I'm assuming that if that's your problem, you're probably not watching this podcast or sticking with it for long. April says it's shocked. Hopefully not. Hopefully the electrician has done the right thing. Yes, I know what you mean. Lisa says, everything is looking at me now. There can be a little bit of thing here where you start, if there is a point whereby if you can get almost into a place where you start seeing faces in everything. And to go back to another bit here, which is kind of at the other extreme. A few weeks ago, I was talking about Phil Crenell, the woodcarver, woodsman, furniture maker. And as well as doing all that, he's also an artist, and he does all these drawings and paintings. And Pareidolia features really strongly in his work because he really does see faces in absolutely, especially wood and all the little knots and everything else. And these then inspire a lot of his pictures. And for him, they're kind of openings into a spiritual world where these faces are not, they might appear to be random, but actually is a hint at or an entrance to a world beyond. There's a whole other world I'm not going to go into with that, but just to kind of give you a sense of how far you can take it. This one, again, I mean, a rusty bit of gate post hinge here, which I love. And again, we've got the two eyes, what looks like a kind of a nose and a mouth. The way the rust thing has gone, looks more like hair here. I mean, it's practically Beaker from the Muppets. Not all of you might get that reference. Some of you might. So, you know, but I really like this one. I think this is a lot of fun, especially when you kind of get the hair frizzing out as well. But what is it? It's just bits of metal, bits of rust, you know. Oh, Lisa says this one makes me laugh, and April goes, yes, Beaker. It's Gord Simpson says, I see faces everywhere. Right, hi Gord. Gordon, right, welcome back. I remember you from last week, so 2 weeks ago, in fact. Glad you could join us again. Then there's the notion of architecture. Okay, so some building, I mean, there is the classic case of the house with the door and the two windows. And in this case, Wallet Smart, building just 150 yards from here over the other side of the park. And to my mind, when you talk about Pareidolia, this building just always leaps out at me, you know, because, and especially because it's not just, sometimes you can have two square windows in a door and it can still look a bit like a face. But when you've got round windows, I mean, just even more so. And then because it's an even symmetrical building, and is it wearing a hat? Are these like little cat ears or something poking out of the sides? It really does have a feel of not just a building, but a whole character to the building. Oh, Roland's joined us as well. Hey, Roland, glad you could make it along. And so and sometimes buildings are deliberately done to kind of have that sense of, maybe give it a little bit of personality. And never more so than this kind of idea where it's deliberately done. And so what have we got here? Oh, Sandra's joined us. Says, hi, everyone. I was on an allotment trip, allotment tidy up today. Running late with the allotment. Glad you could make it. April says, yes, it's a cat house. So April's seeing the cat in this building. But in that notion of kind of deliberately manipulating, it is still Pareidolia, but it's kind of being pushed a little bit, is never more so in cars. And the cover card that I used for this podcast is a Jaguar, an old Jaguar. Now here's a Bentley, an old Bentley that I saw. And this notion, when you've got these sort of big, slightly external headlights, they really do have that notion of eyes. And this has really been exploited by, Disney. You've only got to think of Disney or Pixar's Cars movie, and there's Cars 2, might even be Cars 3. I can't remember how many movies there are. but I seem to remember there was a kids program years ago, an animated one where, where you've got cars and the front grille is basically is done specifically to look like a face. It gives it a personality. Now, different kinds of cars. I mean, this is my car. This is a Mini. And the Mini goes very, very kind of round. Now, this feels a bit more exaggerated. I'm taking with my phone and I'm quite close and it's on wide angle. So it kind of gets stretched out. But eyes on the side, it's quite almost kind of a bug-like this. It's more kind of, the eyes on the side of the head. And then we've got this kind of, the grille as quite a large roundish mouth. This one here, I mean, this was literally taken yesterday while I was out walking. And this Vauxhall here, it looks like the grille has very deliberately been done with a smiley mouth. This is trying to be a friendly family car, this. Whereas if you compare that to, say, something like a BMW, modern BMWs have this kind of hard, sharp eyebrows kind of stuff. And they look much more aggressive. And practically every BMW for the last 20 years at least, and right across the range, tends to have that. And now, whether you want to go off on tangents about what it says about BMW drivers or whatever, but there is a certain level whereby if you're driving along the motorway or freeway or whatever, and a car, you're overtaking, you're in the outside lane, and a car comes up behind you, and you've got this more kind of aggressive headlights in your rearview mirror, maybe you're slightly more likely to pull over, or maybe you're slightly more likely to go, well, actually, I'm not. Maybe it induces a sense of road rage in you or something like that. But the point is that a car like this is giving across it's a much more kind of aggressive feel to it, an action feel to it, than a car like this, which is trying to be more family friendly, or a car like this, which is, trying to be a little bit more playful. So what have we got here? Oh, VG said this one's a lovely capture. I watch you, don't I? My wallet. Oh, that's going back to wallet smarts, I guess. April says she likes the colour. Roland says, I drive a BMW. And Susan says, I'm a BMW driver. Okay, how to alienate the BMW drivers. And a wee excuse, I will say my Mini is made by BMW. So it's sort of a BMW. But I am not casting aspersions on BMW drivers. I'm just pointing out that very often, but BMW have deliberately designed their cars and so if we're taking this pareidolia effect, it's being, there's a reason that car companies spend billions on their research, because the car market, you get the car right, you sell a lot of them, you will make billions. You get it wrong, you waste an awful lot of money. So a lot of designs are done which are designed to appeal to a very particular target market. April says, oh, Honda driver here. Maybe we have a car photo competition later on. Whoever wins the most smug points wants to do cars, then we'll have a car challenge. Not this one though. This is pareidolia. But we can also go to where we find other things. And for this, for example, what we've got is now this is actually on the bed frame in our bedroom. And just a couple of days ago, I noticed when I sort of opened the curtains, and when you again isolate it, this has got a kind of insect. So to me, it's like kind of, it's like big insect eyes with like 6 legs kind of coming. Yeah. So what's that? Yeah. April says bug face. So again, pareidolia doesn't have to necessarily be human, but that, although it's a kind of almost humanized, like that kind of, again, Disney Pixar kind of way of doing a face, whereby they exaggerate the eyes in order to make us relate to these creatures as more human. John's saying, yeah, car photo competition. Okay, well, whoever really wants it will have to make sure that they win the smug points for the month. then we can go on to the, this just again up at the end of the garden the other yesterday. I saw this piece of wood here, and now interestingly with this one, I think it's this piece of wood you can kind of interpret in a couple of different well. Obviously, I bet everybody here is interpreting it in a slightly different way. Now, when I first looked at this, I kind of had something like a kind of octopusy creature. So you've got like an eyes over here, and then you've got this mouth here, and then you've got these kind of leg things that come under. And it's almost like some kind of weird underwater creature. However, what I then also noticed was that if I rotate this, actually, it looks more like a person without a head. That there's like, you've got a neck here, and then you've got arms coming up, and then you've got the body, and then you've got the legs going down. Or maybe like a chicken or something although the chickens wouldn't have the legs like that. But, for me, it's kind of got, where are we? Yeah, this one. What I'm trying to do is, somebody reclining. So this kind again, which way round you turn something can make a difference as to how you interpret it as well. Comments here, Roland's voting for cars as well. Joe says, it's a good example of how you need to think about framing your subject to get a different perception. Absolutely, yes. How we frame it, where we cut it off, whether we're zooming in or zooming out. What's the interesting bit? Is the interesting bit here? Is the interesting bit there? Should I have zoomed out further and tried to get more in elsewhere? So Roland says, I see a deer. April says, it does, morbid. Oh, well, that's like the person without the head, I guess. Yeah. And then there's the notion of, I want to finish off with the notion of pareidolia before I start talking about other things, with my favourite of all times. And this it's not my original, it's not my idea. I saw it elsewhere several years ago, and it just made me laugh so hard. And then I realised that we actually have this sitting in our house, which is this hook, right? And I saw this picture, and with it went, drunk octopus looking for a fight. And once you see drunk octopus looking for a fight, I can't see it any other way. I've never been able to use a hook like this without that expression coming to mind and making me laugh. To me, yes, drunk octopus looking for a fight is just absolutely brilliant. Would I have seen that had somebody not said it? I'm not entirely sure. But now somebody has said it, I can't unsee it. And I think sometimes that's a kind of fun part of pareidolia as well. April says, yes, octopus, I can see it. Lisa says, lol. VG, two tentacles, octopus. Yeah, but it's that notion of the first, it's like, put them up, come on, and it's the drunk eyes, and it's going to get into a fight, come out of the pub. So we just kind of see in the front of it. Yeah, I think it's a... John says drunk octopus is great. Susan says now I'm going to see drunk octopi everywhere. Yes. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So what we're talking about then is this notion of the pareidolia. So to kind of sum up, pareidolia is where the brain is kind of going into overdrive of interpretation. From that point of two dots and a line, we can create a smiley face. But we can see shapes and objects, whether it's cows, dogs, anything you want, or as well as faces, insects. And we're seeing them in clouds. We're seeing them in peeling paint. We're seeing them in blocks of rust. You can see it in dead leaves. We see them in the front of cars. There's all these different ideas of pareidolia. And so the challenge then for 2 weeks' time is for you to come up with a pareidolia photo. Now, the key thing here is it does have to be something taking a picture of a painted face, a bit of graffiti that's already a deliberate design to be a face, or any other kind of object doesn't count. You do that, it's off topic. But it also needs to be something that's recognizable. If you want to, because I'm kind of running this challenge a bit like the ones on sites like PhotoCrowd and ViewBug and what have you, whereby essentially if you're too obscure with this, if you're seeing a dancing kangaroo sitting down at a tea party with a bunch of penguins, that might be what you see, but the chances of anybody else seeing that in a random bit of moss and leaves is highly unlikely. So if you put something in which nobody else is going to know what it is, and even if you were to sort of start drawing a line around it, they'd still be kind of squinting, a little bit like the kind of, it's Elvis to me, but then it's not going to score very well. So it does need to have something which is going to make most of us, without too much effort, go, oh yeah, I can see that. Okay. So, what's Gord saying there? Can I submit something I have recently, or I already have? Yes, absolutely. It's, so if you are, it's just, so if you already have something which is working in your folders because you've already tackled the subject, then that's great. If you want to go out and sort of start hunting over the next 2 weeks, having your phone on you, looking up at the clouds, looking at lichen, moss, rust, peeling paint, anything like that, fronts of cars, then you can do that. If you want to take part, then you send the image to Kim Ayres podcast @gmail.com. So the Kim Ayres podcast @gmail.com has been set up specifically for receiving images. You can alternatively, go to the Facebook page, the Facebook/groups UPwKA, UPwKA, Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. If you're on Facebook, you can stick it in there, or you can email it to me. Whether you put it in the Facebook page or you email it to me, tell me what it is. Okay, say I saw this. Tell me the story behind it. What grabbed you about it? Because I think that's kind of interesting. And then in 2 weeks' time, I will gather all the images together, and we'll have the podcast. We'll see what other people have done. We'll see how they've interpreted the brief. And I think this is the fun part of it. Is whenever we do the challenges, there's the challenge for ourselves to see how we've gone about it, how we match that challenge. And then there's the interest in seeing how other people have done it too. What's Susan saying? Susan says, are you not busy with Spring Fling in 2 weeks? No, I'm busy with Spring Fling next week. Okay. And here's, so I will bring into this little bit of reminder, which is, so this challenge is being set for 2 weeks' time. So the 31st, so the podcast on the 31st of May will be the Pareidolia Challenge podcast. So get your images into me by no later than Friday the 29th. Saturday morning, the absolute latest. But the earlier you can get them in, the easier it is for me, because I have to put all these podcasts together. I have to put the images in, I have to arrange them, I have to work out what order I'm doing them in, all that kind of stuff. So if everything's left to the last minute, it's much more of a struggle. So basically Friday the 29th of May or before, try and get your images in. Like I say, tell me a bit about them as well. Next weekend is the 23rd, 24th and 25th, which is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, is Spring Fling. I mentioned this last week, but I will mention it again now as a reminder that if you happen to be in southwest Scotland or plan on coming into the area, then Spring Fling is this county-wide event. So across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, there are 111 studios opening up to the public. Okay, so there are artists, there are makers, there are weavers, there are jewelers, there are potters, photographers. There are all sorts of artists who are then opening up their studios. You can go to their studio and you can see that where they make, what they make. You can chat to them directly. So it's an amazing thing. And beautiful countryside, all these different routes. You'll never get round 110. If you get round a dozen or two, then you're doing really well. But one of those that you have to visit is studio number 83 on the Orange route. If you can get hold of a Spring Fling catalogue, that's always useful. This then has all the different studios that are in it. And on the Orange route, where are we? Studio 83, we have Crowd. Okay. And that's where I'm going to be. So up on the Crichton estate. But otherwise, if you check out, I will put it in the link in the menu bit below again here. Check out last week's podcast as well. There's a link to a web page. I've also got it up on my Facebook page about where it is, how to find it, all that kind of stuff. Now, and Crowd, I am going to be doing an interactive photography event. What I'm doing is I'm creating a space, I'm creating a scene where when people turn up, I'm going to place them in different spots. But individually, I will take their photo one at a time. So each person will be photographed on their own. After the weekend, when I've got everybody I will then merge them all together into one big crowded scene. So it will look as though the photo was taken at one moment with everybody in it. And what I want everybody to do when they turn up and have that photo taken is look as though they are interacting with other people. So they might be pulling a face at the person next to them, or they might be waving to somebody on the other side of the room. Whatever they're doing, there's some kind of interaction. So when I put all these photos together, this room is going to be full of everybody interacting with each other. And anybody who takes part will get a copy of the photo, and only then will they find out who they were standing next to. Might turn out they're standing next to their next door neighbour, might be a complete stranger, might be their mortal enemy. Somebody they went to school with might be standing behind them, doing bunny ears above their head. There's all sorts of possibilities, and I think there's going to be a lot of fun with that. So this is a bit of an event, a happening. I'm going to be doing this for the 3 days, 23rd, 24th, 25th of May, up at the Crichton Estate in Dumfries. So if you can come along, please do. And even if you want to, even if you don't actually want to take part in the photography bit, I'm going to have lots of pictures on the walls. It's a large room. I've got plenty of space. So there's a whole kind of gallery of images there that you can have. I might even have a behind the scenes video thing running as well. So lots to do, lots to see. And my daughter Meg will be having some gluten-free tasty bites that you can, dive into as well, just as an extra little treat. She's raising a bit of money for the local food bank. So lots to do for that for next week. What are we saying? Gord says, I'm on my walk camera in hand, 25-kilometre goal and 1 keeper. Excellent. Wow. That's a fair old walk if you're doing 25 kilometres a time. Yeah, having a camera with you, but like I say, your phone will very often, for those who don't want to carry a big thing around with you for these kind of challenges anyway, your phone will do. So where else are we at then? Oh yeah, another quick little reminder here is Substack. Just for those who now, have I got that? Yes, I think I've just got this here now. I've recently added it. So basically, I've set up a newsletter. The first one went out just the other day, 2 days ago, I think, or 3 days. And so I'm using Substack. So if you go to kimairesphotography.substack.com, I've now set up a monthly newsletter. And that monthly newsletter is free. And what it will do is it will keep you up to date with the podcast. So the one that's just gone out, I've said what was coming up in May. I've said what happened in April. And probably most months I'll do a little bit of a quick revision on what's happened the month before and what's coming up. So if you've missed something or, then you can keep informed with that. But what I'll also do, the one that's just gone, for example, I talk about spring fling, and again, where you can find it. So if you go and sign up to the newsletter, and you can you can get the details of how to find me there as well. So yes, that's free, and you can sign up for it, and you can get. So I'll talk about if I'm running any workshops, if I've done some interesting behind the scenes stuff. Bits and pieces will end up in the newsletter. So if you're interested at all, go to Substack, sign up. It's absolutely free, doesn't cost you anything, and you can stay informed of what's going on with my photography and the podcast. So we've got Substack. We've talked about Smug points. Well, so far we haven't really done anything with Smug points. If you turned up this week and left a comment, you get 5 Smug points. If you left a comment 2 weeks ago, you also get 5 Smug points. So I think this is all going to hinge now on what you send in for the Pareidolia challenge. If you send in anything for the Pareidolia challenge, you get 10 Smug points for submitting something. But then we'll have the crowd vote, and if you win the crowd vote, you get a bonus 20 Smug points. And then we'll have my vote. If you win my vote, you get 30 Smug points. If you come second, 20 Smug points. Third, 10 Smug points. And then there'll be a handful of commenders for 5 Smug points. So whoever ends up with the most Smug points at the end of this month gets to choose the topic for June. Okay, so John and Roland, if you're desperate for cars, make sure you submit a really good Pareidolia image for this one, because I think whoever wins the challenge this month is most likely to be the person who chooses the topic for next month. So hopefully a little bit of incentive for you there. Well, I suppose if you've been enjoying these podcasts and you find them useful, interesting, entertaining even, you can always buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can support these podcasts. But to be honest, inviting a friend also supports them. Turning up, leaving comments also supports them. And sign up to the newsletter as well. And tell your friends about the newsletter for that matter. If you know anybody who also happens to take photography, do photography and might be interested, point them to the newsletter as well. VG says, Roland says on it. Okay, excellent. VG says, will you do live from Spring Fling? Probably not. Spring Fling, by experience, I've been doing it quite a lot of the years over the last 15. I've taken about 3 or 4 years out, but so 11 out of the last 15-ish I've done. And one of the things that happens with Spring Fling is it's full on. My focus is on the people who are coming in, and certainly with this one, where it's all going to be about trying to slot people in, make sure everybody's in the right place. I've got a couple of people coming in, giving me a bit of a hand, volunteers, helping me to move people around and keep a tag of who's doing what. I'm going to be so focused on that. I'm not going to be able to break off and then start creating videos. I will, if I have quiet moments, try and remember, and somebody reminds me, maybe do a couple of little record shorts to my phone, which over the next day or two, I may then upload to this YouTube channel. So if you're subscribed, then you may well get a notification that I've uploaded something. And if you haven't subscribed, just, down below, hit the subscribe button. And of course, like I say, don't forget to hit the like. The like is always useful for the algorithms. So yeah, no live from next weekend. It is Spring Fling. If you want to see me next weekend, come to Dumfries and see me then. If otherwise, I'll be back in 2 weeks. Make sure you put in your image for the Pareidolia challenge. I think that's it. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined in. Thank you to VG for coming up with the idea of Pareidolia in the first place. And I look forward to seeing you all. A couple of people saying have a good time next weekend and all the rest of it. Excellent. Right. Have fun. See you all in a fortnight, if not next week. Take care. Bye-bye.